Hello and welcome back to Coast FC, the Canadian soccer podcast focused on all things CPL, Canadian Championship, and more. My name is Felipe Ojeho.
And I'm Mike Rice.
And we are reviewing Matchday 14. We're officially at the halfway mark in the CPL season. It has flown by. It's been a bit of a hectic week, obviously, for not just ourselves, but anyone that is into footy with all of the finalizations of Copa America and Euros. But now that that's all done and dusted, you know, obviously the Olympics are still coming, so there's still some international football you want to that you would want to pay attention to. It's right there. But now we can have a little bit more focus on the good stuff. On the CPL.
That's it, the good stuff.
The good stuff. Back to the normal here. And we're going to be talking in about 3 games only this weekend, not 4 games. 2 teams were not involved in this weekend's matches, but still plenty to talk about across the 3 matches. We're going to start with the first match. We're going to go in chronological order this week.
Yeah.
Talking with Vancouver FC and Atletico Ottawa. This is a match that I actually went to. Glad that was the first time that I left the house after being sick for about a week. And it was so nice to be able to leave the house, breathe fresh air, you know, go out back into society. And no better way than to go and watch a football match, a CPL match. Unfortunately, at least for those home fans and for the environment, didn't go the way that the people around me might have wanted it to, because Ottawa came away the victors and the big time victors with a 3-0 scoreline. Tough one for Vancouver FC, Mike, and it felt kind of like out of nowhere, because last week we saw them have a really good comeback against Forge, comeback 3-3. We were talking about how Vancouver FC is one of the most entertaining sides to watch, that they'll score a bunch of goals, they'll concede a lot of goals. It's always an entertaining one, but for this one, it kind of fell a little bit flat for them.
Yeah, there seems to be sort of a bit of give and take in that first half, especially. They did sort of end-to-end moments throughout it, and Cavalry got a penalty from a good counter attack after some great defending, and it started off where you thought this could be like a really good sort of tussle between the 2 teams. Like Vancouver they've got that sort of bit about them that they're trying to, like, they're quite rugged and will battle away, and they don't. At times you look at them and they look like a team that should be, we don't care how good you are, we're going to still fight and we're going to try and do what we can. But yeah, it's just come that second half, it just looked a little bit like they sort of maybe a little bit tired from having to do that all the way through in Ottawa, and found those moments where they could be a bit more clinical. And I mean, if you're going to play 1-2s off the post and score and things like that, like, the luck just goes with you in that second half, and it was quite hard for the other team to keep fighting, I guess.
Yeah, and it felt like it was. I mean, it was confusing. Like, I was genuinely just confounded on the entire sort of match, because, like you mentioned, like the first half, it would look neck and neck. There could have been 2 penalties, you know, back to back. Handball on Rocco Romeo seconds before Mickey Cantav gets cleaned out. Yeah, there was no contact with the ball at all. I don't know how the ref didn't see that, or the linesman didn't see that. The man was nowhere near Cantav or the ball. He was all on Cantav, but somehow the referee didn't give a penalty. But it went into the break with both sides not really creating too many chances. So, you know, it was a hot day, so probably the heat took some effect into the team, but it looked like both sides were very much in it. And in the second half, you know, Ottawa came out a little bit the stronger side. They got that goal off a mistake from David Norman Jr. and the entire team deflated in a way that I hadn't seen. Well, I mean, I saw it against Halifax, but I thought that was a one-time thing. Now that's 2 games in a row, 2 back-to-back home losses where they've lost by multiple goals, where it's felt like they kind of suffered that mentality loss the head loss that they suffered in 2023.
Yeah.
And the thing that's so confusing is that they have the players with experience, with leadership. It's not the kids anymore. It's not, just a thrown together squad. This is a carefully curated, cultivated squad, but we're still seeing sort of the same mental issues from the team, even though it's on paper they're supposed to be better, and they've shown better. I mean, last week against Forge was a huge comeback from them to be able to go down into at Tim Hortons Field against Forge, to be able to come back and tie 3-3 and even have opportunities to make it more. It was just so confusing how in less than a week we got the performance that we got against Ottawa.
Yeah, it's getting a bit difficult for them, and I think part of it, they've got this sort of leave it all out on the field sort of mentality, which can be really tough if things don't go your way and you're putting everything into games, and mentally it can be quite draining as well as physically. But I think this big gap in the midfield is causing all sorts of problems when you're playing with those two central midfielders. And Renan Garcia is fantastic, but David Norman Jr. isn't a centre midfielder. NU, who's gone in there, isn't the centre midfielder at times. So I think this lack of consistency through availability is really causing a massive hole in the way this system plays at the moment. I think they're really missing sort of big characters in there. And Vasco Fry, obviously suspended, is really difficult to throw in a centre back to try and replace what he does. And I think that can be really difficult for the team. And you could see at times, I think it was the first goal, obviously, with David Norman Jr. going back and losing out. Callum Irvin gets frustrated, but you see him walk past the defenders to talk to the midfield and say, like, what's going on? It wasn't he's having a go at his defence for conceding a goal. I think he was worried about the protection they were receiving as well.
Yeah, no, and you mentioned the loss of Vasco Fry being huge. I don't know if I necessarily agree with putting David Norman Jr. in midfield. I don't know if that's, I mean, for those, as a deep cut, he did play there, I think, for Pacific in a short stint there. I think I was talking with Alex Conge-Ruzek, and he was informing me, it's like, it's not foreign to him, but it's not his natural sort of position. He is a center back, and you look at the bench and what's available to them. It's, they have Kembo Kibato, they have Grady McDonough, who I thought had a really good cameo towards the end of the second half, that they're more natural midfielders. And I don't know, obviously the coach is entitled to his opinions and to his decisions. And we know that he doesn't, he isn't afraid of, unorthodox roles for players. That's something that's been a feature for him his entire career at Vancouver FC so far. But if I was one of the midfielders, Grady or Kembo or any of them, and I thought, okay, Vasco Fry is out for 3 games. This is an opportunity for me to go into the midfield and, prove myself. And instead I see a center back being kind of thrust into a defensive midfield position, whether it's NU or David Norman. I kind of feel it's like, well, what's the point of me then? I feel like, it's supposed to be like, a midfielder in for a midfielder. You put a center back in for a midfielder. You see some of the mistakes, David Norman, the issue that happened, he had a heavy touch. He took the touch the wrong way towards goal instead of away from goal. Tabla overpowered him and got it away. It's not something that, it's a mistake, but you got to feel like if a proper midfielder was there, likely wouldn't have made a mistake because they're more used to playing under pressure with their backs towards goal.
Yeah, I guess, Kibata, we must not have the faith of Ashton Gotby to start yet. And Grady McDonough is still very young, so I imagine he's still trying to be careful of the positions he throws him into. Is the only, when looking at these specific incidents, like trying to look back at it with sort of hindsight after the game sort of thing. That's the only thoughts I can really think to try and understand why Gottlieb made that decision. But yeah, it's a difficult period for them these next few games without Vasco Fry, and there must be, I think there's injuries. I'm trying to names of blank.
Caden Chung and Moses Dyer are other ones.
Simmons as well. Is he there? Is he still in the roster?
Oh no, Elliot Simmons is not with the club anymore.
He's not with the club anymore, is he? So yeah, no replacement for him. Obviously, when he went, really. To match what he was able to do last year. So yeah, it's a difficult position for them at the moment.
Yeah, no, it is. And like obviously injuries destabilize the team, and maybe that's a contributing factor to the kind of inconsistency in their mentality. And listen, individual mistakes will happen. You could see even in the third goal, it was an individual mistake in the sense of, and you got skinned, and the goal should have never went in. That was a shot pretty much right towards Irving. It kind of dipped at the end that you could say might have fooled him, but I'm pretty sure Irving himself would admit that should have never gone past him.
And it was a move that seemed to have died out, and then all of a sudden Salter rescues it, and like with the poor defending of Venue.
Yeah, exactly. And it was a non-chance that Salter managed to turn into a goal based on those individual mistakes, and they will happen. But I feel like it's becoming a pattern now with Vancouver FC. A lot of these individual mistakes, and it's no longer just, oh, they're going to happen. It feels more like when you see these many individual mistakes week in and week out, it's not just on the players as much. I feel like it's on something greater. I'm not saying necessarily the coach, but I'm saying the environment, the ambience, the kind of mentality of the whole squad maybe is not quite as sharp. Maybe it's because the organization and the structure and the roles aren't as clear. Maybe the players are having to second guess themselves, overthink in certain positions, and there's where the mistakes lie. But it's becoming a serious problem that's affecting the consistency of this team, and the fact that they're making mistakes and then they can't respond to the mistakes in some games. In other games they can, but in some games, specifically the last two at home, they haven't been able to find a response to these mistakes, and then they let the games get away from them, and it becomes a blowout in a game that should have never been a blowout. That's something that Afshin Gopi talked about a lot, and afterwards, at most, it was a 1-0 loss that turned into a 3-0 loss. That shouldn't have never been. So it was a bit concerning. And for me, it's like, if the case is that you want to, let's say you really like having Rocco Romeo, David Norman, and Alan Enyu, and you want to try to find a way to shoehorn 3 of them in. I don't know why. I mean, it might take too much time. It might be too much of a shift. Why don't you switch to a back 3 and have them as the back 3? When Kane Chung is fit, and Paris G, really good players that attacking are really good. Have them as wingbacks and kind of shift to a different system if you feel like you want to play with those 3 midfielders, and you can play maybe like a sort of 3-5-2 if you still want this 2 strikers of Diaz and Dyer. It just feels like there are other ways that you can maybe implement some of these players if you really, really want to play them. And this is if it's not a case of just injury. If it is the case that he really wants to play all 3 of them. But it just feels like, I know I keep coming to this week in and week out, it just feels like there's a lack of identity in this squad. I still, watching them up close and watching them on TV, kind of can't piece together what is the philosophy behind Vancouver FC because of how inconsistently they play. I don't know if you kind of are in the same boat as I'm.
Yeah, I think he's going out with kind of like a sort of a high risk strategy to a degree. So when it doesn't go perfectly, it does, like, holes just appear everywhere, and it does look like the team's without a clue at times, and you're really like fighting together to do it rather than following a plan. So yeah, I do see what you mean with that.
Yeah, and I don't know, like, Afshin is a lovely fellow, and I've loved having the conversations that I had with him, and you can see how much the game means to him, and you can see, that when the players do respect him and when they do look up to him, he can form really strong bonds with the players. But it felt, especially after this match, like not everyone has sort of bought into option. It just feels like, or the vision that he has at the club necessarily. And it makes me question is he getting the best out of his players right now? Is his approach the right one? Because he's sort of old school in that he is not afraid to sort of put it on players, and he won't publicly shame them, but he is not afraid to kind of look at his players and be like, "You've disappointed me. You're not doing good enough. You're out, and I'm putting new players in." Because that's sort of what
Yeah.
he alluded to at the end of the press conference, that he has to have some honest conversations with players and make personnel changes because he feels like there are players that aren't giving their 110% across the 90 minutes. And obviously, I think that's a fair thing to do. But sometimes you got to take a step back and you have to question why. Is it just because it's the players? Is it just a personnel issue, or is it something that is maybe more on the coach and with the approach that he's doing? I don't know if that's my own like coach brain thinking of it, but that's sort of the takeaway that I've been getting from there.
Yeah, they're in a tough spot, and he's got like not as tough as some other managers, but yeah, I think
Yes.
he needs to start building a bit more of a clearer plan on the pitch and an understanding that it seems like there is just one way to play at the moment, and they will go out and they'll try and do that. And they've relied on Callum Irving's sort of heroics at times to get away with some results. But when he doesn't have his best game, those issues do get highlighted as well at times. So yeah, it does need to come up with some sort of plan Bs and Cs maybe to adapt in game a bit better.
Yeah, because they have a good side and they've had really good performances as well throughout the season. And it's shown that they are capable of going pretty much toe to toe with anyone in the league. To be able to go against Ford, should be able to go against Pacific and Cavalry and have the type matches, Ottawa as well. Like it's not like they're the poor side that we saw at the beginning of last season. They have shown that they are a good side. That's why they are in the position that they are. But it's just kind of the fine lines, the minute details that are sort of lacking, and it's those little things that will go a long way to pushing them to be potential title contenders. And that's the thing that's, I think, lacking right now. And if you look at their schedule, 4 out of their next 5 games are at home, which can be an advantage for them because they're in front of their own fans. And at the beginning of the season, the Willoughby was sort of a fortress for them. But now, they got that pressure because in the last 2 games, they've scored 0, conceded 7, and lost both matches. They have a lot to sort of make up for their fans, for the fan base already. Attendance is something that is so crucial for the clubs, and that's why the results mean more than just the points on the board. So it's gonna be a big month and a half for Vancouver FC to be able to make up for these 2 really sorry performances in the last 2 home matches.
Yeah, exactly.
But we've been talking about Vancouver FC a lot, so maybe let's talk a little bit about Ottawa before we move into our break. From an Ottawa perspective, job done. A perfect game, almost 3-0, kept the clean sheet away from home. They kind of put the demons to bed from last week against Pacific in a game that, let's be honest, they should not have lost, but they ended up losing. And it was a win against a top half rival, and it puts them back, with a little bit more breathing room at the top. The real question now is, can they build on this? Because they've had a little bit of inconsistent form in the last few weeks. They've had a couple draws, a couple losses, when they, the start of the season when they had such a good, form. We haven't really seen all that much of that in the last few weeks. So it's a great opportunity for Carlos Gonzalez and his team to kind of turn this into a good spell of form. I feel like we've seen a little bit of what made them so dangerous at the beginning of the season in this past game. And again, I don't know how much of that is just Vancouver FC basically surrendering But we saw Tabla show that determination to be able to win that ball back. You saw Del Campo get back on the scoreboard because he was been a little bit of a drought lately. And you saw Sam Salter come on and also score. And again, yeah, Del Campo's lucky. Salters shouldn't be a goal, but it's great for their confidence to have both of your strikers to score. That's really good for competition. And if they both keep, pushing each other to be better and to score more goals, that's only going to benefit the team as a whole. So it's a big result now. It's about, can they kind of turn this into a better run of form?
Yeah, there's a few, like, obviously those the big names there sort of stood out with the goals, but I mean, Dave Graham was really good in this, like, for his sort of defensive sort of reading of the game. He's really, like, he anticipated things really well. Good number of sort of interceptions. Ty Walker got away with one, but it's nice to see that he's getting that game time to build up a bit of experience again, because it's been quite quiet. This obviously limited opportunities this year so far, and they got players. Those fullbacks, I thought they were really defensively. They did really well, but then they're also throwing it. It was one of their sort of not standout games for either of them, because they've had a few of those, but this was one of those games where you just thought, yeah, these guys look really in tune with what they're meant to be doing. And there seemed to be a little bit of that around some of these players that are sort of those regulars that aren't going to get rotated. That's the reason why they're first names on the team sheet, sort of thing.
Yeah, and I thought, I also think we've been talking about Ollie Bassett, how he has sometimes felt like he's kind of blended in the last, few weeks, or at least, in the entire season as you look at it as a whole so far, because of how many superstars have been around him. I thought it was a really good performance from him today. I think even though he was, again, more in a wide position, it felt like he was able to be on the ball more. Maybe that's because he has Twardek behind him, and Twardek is somebody that can bomb forward and back and can kind of allow you more space in the middle, because he's always going to be, taking the attention of the fullback. So Bassett had a bit more space. I do want to comment that some little bit of karmic justice happened in the game that wasn't available on the broadcast. So I'd love to let you know and let the listeners know that James Cameron was getting a little bit too full of himself in the match. And when the ball went up for a throw-in, had a little bit of a shove on Ollie Bassett, and, had a little bit of afters, had a little talky with him, and the two kind of kept up to it, just kind of, talking smack to each other. Not 2 minutes later, Balou Tabla scores the opening goal, and instead of going to celebrate with his teammates, the first thing Ollie Bassett does is will go straight up into James Cameron's face and do the little talky hand sign and kind of laugh in his face. And James Cameron had no response. So a little bit of a lesson to him about as Jamie Vardy, the famous words he always said, chat shit, get banged. So a big lesson for James Cameron then. But Bassett in general, I thought, had a really good game. And Lieberman Torres, I think, as well, had a pretty good game. The fact that he got the starts, he had a bit of a roller coaster of a debut, obviously, in that game against Forge, and getting the last minute goal, but giving away the goal before. But he seemed a little bit more settled in this. And the defense, obviously, Amir Didic had a big performance as well. Overall, it just felt like Ottawa really kind of showcased, specifically in the second half, showcased why they are the league leaders. And if you look at their schedule for the next few weeks, they're mostly actually away from home. Only 3 home games between now and the end of the summer, August 31st. And most of the games are away from home. So this will be a good example of what they're capable of doing away from home. And with only 5 points between them and York United, they're going to want to make sure that they keep this gap going if they want to, pretty much grab the North Star Shield with one hand. So impressive performance from Ottawa overall, and we'll see if they can keep it going in the weeks to come. Since the episode is a bit of an asymmetrical one, we're actually going to go into our break right now, and we're going to listen to some audio from a very emotionally charged press conference from Vancouver FC, specifically from one Ben Fisk, who got a little bit overcome with emotions against it. Here it is.
It's like a hard fought first half. How do you see
Where to start? Yeah, I think the first half was pretty cagey. Whether that's the heat, but also, we've had some kind of crazy results the last few games, going both ways. So I think we started the game kind of how we wanted to, a bit more organized, and went into halftime kind of right where we wanted it. And the second half, honestly, I have to watch it back because from how it felt, I felt, like we were actually playing quite well with the ball, and creating a lot of chances, and getting to the areas that we wanted to. But they can't really compete at this level and make mistakes like we did there on the goals. I think it was like under 12 football, to be honest. Excuse me, it's fucking embarrassing. I can't, honestly, I can't let that see that. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Maybe a different question then. You're basically some big contributors in suspension duty for sure. Obviously, Vasco and Kate and Texas. How do you kind of overcome those kind of big losses and moving forward in this short future?
Three great players, but I think we have an unbelievable squad. I think we're the squad without those three still to go and win this league. I believe in each and every one of those guys, coaching staff, everyone behind the scenes. I think it's an unbelievable group of people. So for me, it doesn't matter who's available, who's not available. I think we have the team to win every game.
So that was Ben Fisk. As you can tell, he was kind of distraught after that match. He was very emotional. As somebody that was at the conference, you could feel the tension in the air was palpable. So it's definitely an environment for growth for Vancouver FC right now. And Afshin Gopi said afterwards that if everyone felt like Ben Fisk felt after that match, then they'd have a really, really good team. But the issue is that he doesn't feel like everyone does, which kind of points to there might be some trouble brewing behind the scenes more than we are let in. But let's move on to happier things, or at least not such somber things. Talk about the second match of the weekend, which was Cavalry against York United. Another case of the visiting team getting the better of the home side. York won 2-1 against Cavalry, and it was a match where the first half, similar to the Vancouver FC match, was a little lacking. But it wasn't lacking in terms of opportunities, just in terms of actual finishing. And that seems to be a trend for matches involving Cavalry, at least on the Cavalry side, because once again, the missing shooting boots cost Cavalry big and cost them 1 to 3 points in this one, because they had 13 shots to York United's 8, and only one was on target, and that was the goal at the very, very, very end of the match. And simply put, Mike, that's just not good enough.
No, it's really not. I mean, I like the one, I guess, caveat, just because I really like Wojcicki, is that chance that he had was so close. When he let that long ball over the top from Carducci, we just couldn't quite get onto the end of it. But he's the workhorse in this team. Like, when it gets into the final third, he's seems to feel like he needs to take everything on his shoulders, and anytime he gets a chance, he'll have a go, it seems, which sometimes is great. But like you see from that, the chances, when you go back and watch the game, like the choices they're making of when to shoot, just it doesn't seem right. They seem rushed at times. Sometimes they're too slow. It's just the wrong decision, like quite a lot of the time. Sometimes it's just a poor finish, or the defense make it difficult for them. But I think it's just far too often that final third, they're just not making particularly quick, good decisions.
Yeah. And like to be fair to Wojciechowski, it feels sometimes like he's the only one that's taking a gamble
Yeah.
in the attack, the only one that's willing to take something on, and it's something that it's been really tough for Cavalry, and obviously injury issues are one of the biggest things going into that because Sergio Camargo, Ali Musi, Willie Akio, which you would say is probably the starting three that would play behind, Wojciechowski, are all injured, and those are all players that can be difference makers. So it kind of does feel like it's falling on Wojciechowski to be the difference, but you can't really expect him to do as much, especially since York United were playing in the back three in the first half. He was going basically 1v3, and most of the opportunities were coming from crosses. Yeah. And as big as a fellow that Wojciechowski is, he's going against three center backs that are trained week in and week out on dealing with crosses into the box. So it's really tough for him to be able to do much. And that opportunity, he was so close to be able to do it. And he managed to do something similar at the very end for the goal. But if he would have got that in, it might have been a different story. But
yeah,
it must be frustrating right now as a Cavalry fan to watch it, because you see your team dominate possession. They look to be playing well, especially in the first two phases of play. But then when it gets to the final third, unless it's Fraser Aird, pretty much, getting that perfect cross towards the back post, there's not much else that's really being created. And as in the league where you face the same team 4 times, you can't be one note, you can't be one dimensional. And it feels like Cavalry have sort of become one dimensional, and it's not like they were firing goals at the beginning and now the teams have figured themselves out. This has been an issue the entire season for Cavalry. It's one of the reasons why they're in 5th or 6th right now in the table, and it's not just they're in like, oh, it's a poor first quarter, but they'll be able to make it back sort of the same way they did last season. No, now we're halfway through the season and they're still 6th. They're 2 points behind Pacific and they're level on games. So it is very much like, oh no, they're just not in a great form. They're drawing too many games. They're not taking advantage of the the spaces in behind, and they should be, with the quality side that they have, taking games by the scruff of the neck and putting them to bed 2, 3, 4 nils, similar to what we've seen from Ottawa and Forge and the other top teams. We haven't been able to really see that from them as of late, Cavalry, and it's been affecting them for a while, but it's starting to really, really cost them. And you look at, Valing, who came on in the second half of the last half hour, and he looked bright. He did look bright, and he looks like he's a player that maybe can help out a bit in terms of being that difference maker in the final third, especially with Akio out for the season. Ali Musi, I don't know how long he's going to be injured for him. I think it's until August. So it's going to be important to have dynamic wingers that are willing to be direct and take their man on to kind of instill some energy in the team. But honestly, it feels like they need more than just that. I think they need more firepower. Do you think that they'll be looking in the transfer market to add a couple other pieces in the midfield and the attack to help their goal scoring woes? Because it surely can't continue like this.
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, and you look at the team that started out against York, you've got, I'll give the exception of Mironiuk, because obviously he's a young player, so when we say he's still learning the game, but the rest of the players on that pitch, most CPL teams would look at and be like, yeah, that's a good player that I'd have in my team. The issue is they just don't have anyone who's particularly like creative in the final third. Like, no one is going to do anything that sort of dazzles. They're all good players because they work hard and they will follow the plan that's set out for them, and they're very good at that. But they just can't do anything that will take anyone by surprise in the final third. Like, I mean, Gutierrez, you kind of thought like when he went there, maybe he'll get that chance to be a bit freer with the ball, but he's slotted into that Cavalry style of being a defensive midfielder, and he's very good at that. But again, it doesn't help when it gets to the final Bird, Jesse Daly, Charlie Trafford, Shamit Sham, all these players do really well when they're in their sort of in the middle third and the defensive third, but when it's in the final third, it's not their sort of forte. So with Akio being gone for the whole season with injury, like they've got to bring in someone because if Musi comes back, Camargo, unfortunately, when they lose those players, they lose anything that could ever resemble them slightly. There's not saying like, oh yeah, get a like for like replacement, but you haven't got anyone who's stretching the field. You haven't got anyone who's gonna like beat a couple of players and do something without like which might like confuse the defense, and that's their biggest issue with the way they've set the squad up, I think.
Yeah, that's something that I think Tommy Willen Jr. will definitely need to look at now that the secondary transfer window is open, and don't be surprised if it's not just Walling or Valling that is walking through the doors at Cavalry. But let's look now towards York United, because this rich vein of form is continuing for York United. We can finally firmly say it's not just a new manager bounce. This is the new York United, and what a role they are on. Again, great tactical organization from Mora. I'm really enjoying his sort of tactical noose that he brings to the CPL, because he spoke about it a little bit afterwards. I heard it in the press conference that the reason why he went for a back three, he brought Oswaldo Leon back in, is to really crowd the midfield, allow the wingbacks to press out wide, or the central areas, crowd the central areas, or allow the wingbacks to press out wide and try to stop players like Fraser Aird and Shamit Shom to get into the half spaces or out wide and cross into the box, which is one of the known dangers that Cavalry have. And it worked. It completely pretty much nullified them, except for that chance that Warchowski had at the very end, and I think Klomp had a bit of a half chance of a header in a free kick. Cavalry had pretty much nothing else in that first half, and then it's a big call from him in the second half to take off Noah Badney, who was part of the back three, and throw on Martin Wojciechowski, and to go back into a back four and kind of open the game up in that way. And it allowed Cavalry some chances, but it also really benefited York in their attack. And the fact that yes, Cavalry did dominate possession a lot, but the fact that they were still able to feel like they were in control of the game because they were the more dangerous side just goes to show how much of a great tactician Benjamin Mora is, and it's something that is such an appeal for the league to have him in there.
Yeah, definitely. He's really looked at, adapts his team to play like in game, before game. Like it's not just like we've mentioned with some other managers that there's a plan A, and if plan A isn't working, do it harder. Like there's a different way of doing things, and he's getting the best out of these players. Like Batney last year looked like a good player with promise. Now he just looks like a settled starter in the CPL. Like you said, like he's helped these players ensure that they're confident, they know what they're doing, and they are like really, really useful players. And the additions that have been brought in have really helped. And now he's getting the best out of Mo Babuli. Like he was having, like he just looked like he was having fun out there. And obviously that free kick was incredible. But the chances that he's doing what we was just saying that Cavalry don't have, he's receiving the ball and making quick turns, like little Cruyff turn. So he's doing things that just force the defense to rush back and panic. And other teams like Cavalry just couldn't do that to them. And when you've got Babuli looking confident, happy, and strong and consistent, that's going to be really useful. It's not just a defensive showing. It's there's some excitement in the team as well.
Yeah, because you can tell that pretty much everyone in that team right now is bubbling with confidence.
Yeah,
the fact that Babuli is doing those quick turns and has the confidence to step up and dispatch a wonderful free kick like that, and you look at, you know, not just him, but pretty much everybody on the pitch, the way that they're passing it around.
Yeah.
Cordova is huge. You know, Adecoke has become a really, really good holding midfielder to allow players like Cordova and Martinez to kind of venture up a big forward. Brian Wright, you know, for the second goal, the way that he just megged the defender and put it on the plate for Jimo's goal is just you can see examples all over the pitch. Just these little things, the flicks, the tricks. You know, sometimes, you know, it's not great to see a player always doing that because they lose possession and stuff like that, and sometimes it can be a show of arrogance. But it's right now the way that they are playing, those are examples of just confidence. Everyone is feeling good. Everyone is feeling it. The fact that they're playing well, the fact that they're winning, the fact that they're, you know, a powerhouse team now in such a short amount of time. It's incredible to see and to watch. And I don't think there's maybe aside from Atletico Ottawa, another side in the CPL that teams are probably more afraid of to play right now than York United. I mean, they just handed Cavalry, who haven't been playing great, but even still, they just handed Cavalry their first home loss of the season in the league. That's a huge thing because Atco Field is not an easy place to go and to manage to get a victory. You know, you can count pretty much on one hand the amount of times that's happened in the last 6 to 12 months. So the fact that they made it look, well, not easy, but they made it look, you know, relatively comfortable, it goes to show how much Benjamin Mora has, you know, turned this team around. And if you're looking at a side that is coming into their own at a perfect time, you know, right towards the halfway point, if they can keep this going, because when you have confidence and a really good tactical structure, the sky's the limit, honestly. I don't know about you, but like, for me, if he manages to continue this belief from the players in himself and continue to foster this confidence, I could see York United finish in those top 2 places comfortably by the end of the season.
Yeah, the way they're playing, like the fact that they can be so sort of defensively solid, like throughout a game, they can adapt to different teams they play, and then have this sort of free flowing when they're going forward. I mean, you mentioned they're like throwing in the flicks and the tricks, but they're seeing the spaces to go into and they're attacking them. Whereas some team players will do the flicks and tricks because they're not really sure what else to do and hope for the best.
Exactly.
Whereas this is a quick, like, okay, the space is there, I'm going to attack it, and I might have to do a little flick, but it's going to come off, and I'm not running into traffic. I'm doing it for a reason. But he just seems to have got them like understanding the game better, understanding how their actions will affect their teammates, how to sort of take advantage of other players. And I agree with you. The way we're playing at the moment, the biggest issue is when they come up against Forge, they seem to get sort of like that little brother syndrome.
That's true.
Can keep going on. I think that's their next sort of big hurdle to jump, is getting like another good, like a good result over Forge will be something that I think that they mentally, that would be a sort of a big boost for them, even more so than probably getting something over Ottawa.
Yeah, because if you look at the next matches, they go to Vancouver FC at home. That's going to be a really big match for both sides.
Yeah,
but especially for Vancouver FC. But then you would say that, you know, probably one of their biggest tests is at home against Ottawa again. And then the next week, at the beginning of August, they go away from home to Pacific, which, you know, Pacific, again, not in great form, but still Starlight is a difficult place to go and try to win. And it's not until towards the end of August 23rd, where they actually face Forge. So they have a lot of time between now and August 23rd to kind of build that momentum. Because like you mentioned, I think if they can sort of prove themselves against Forge, who they've always had, you know, a little bit of a soft, they kind of show the soft part of their underbellies against. I think that that'll be a huge statement from Benjamin Mora to really show that York United are a team that can go very, very far in this league, and it'll be big to see them be able to take that opportunity by the scruff of the neck and get a result. I think that'll mean so much to the team if they can make that happen. So they got a few weeks several weeks actually, to make sure that they can.
Back in the goals again.
Yeah, exactly. But before we move on to the next match, I do want to talk about Shola Jimo's goal, because not only is it a big goal for him and for the club, but also it's a big goal because of what it means to the league. Because I don't know if you caught Jesse Marsh's, the Canadian men's head coach, comments about the CPL, but he talked about how he needs CPL and Canadian soccer in general to really help the national team build on their very impressive performance in Copa America, specifically by cultivating and playing the kids, growing the next generation of Canadian players. He said, like, I don't know if there are rules about how many young players can play, but there should be, because that's the goal of the CPL, to play young players and to help them grow, give them those professional opportunities. Because then he has a point. A lot of North American, just because of the way that it works with the collegiate system, a lot of North American players don't get their first professional opportunities until they're 22, 23 years old. And in the modern game, it's not old, but it's kind of like, that's not young anymore in soccer. 22, 23 is no longer young. You look at Yamin Lamal for Spain. He's 16 or just turned 17 years old, and he's a European championship, and he won young player of the tournament. Like, this is a new era of football. You need to have 16, 17, 18-year-olds coming up big with big goals, winning goals, playing a bunch of games, getting assists, becoming staples of their sides, if we want this league and this country to sort of continue to grow and continue to develop. And I think that, the fact that he got this goal is a great example that the CPL is creating these opportunities for the young players, exceptional young talent, the thing that allowed at the very beginning TJ Tahid and James Cameron the ability to play. I think is a fantastic initiative for the CPL to kind of foster this environment of let's let these young players that are really, really good the opportunities to play against players 5, 10, 15 years their senior, so they can understand what it means to play professionally at a young age. And I feel like, this goal is huge for showcasing that what the CPL are doing is working. Now the question is, what can they do better?
Yeah, and that'll come with time, won't it? It was good to see. I mean, I enjoyed the comments, was it, of Kosi Thompson over at Toronto? Like,
oh yes,
the CPL after their defeat. But it's nice that it's the right place. Like, it's the right thing to do to improve the quality coming up and exposing this sort of professional environment to younger players, because it's a big hurdle. Like, when you leave college and go into a professional club, that's a hurdle. Like, so when you do it at younger ages, it can only give better opportunities and find better players. And it creates that sort of pipeline from being a young player to being a national team player, because before we've seen that there are a lot of young promising players in Canadian academies or academies abroad, but there's just not enough opportunities for them to really sink their teeth into the professional game, and they end up falling behind their peers that are getting those opportunities earlier in their careers, because they're going up to Europe where they're facing players that are much older from a young age, and there you see clubs consistently calling upon 17, 18, and 19-year-olds, something that isn't really seen all that much in the North American scene until recently with MLS Next Pro and now the CPL. That's where I feel like for Canada specifically, it's huge to be able to see these players have these opportunities. And for a 16-year-old like Shola Jimo, who is the second youngest CPL scorer behind TJ Tahid, missed him by about, I think it was like 40 or 50 days at 16, 96 or something. It goes to show that the kids can play. The kids can play. Really, really good movement for the goal as well. Like, just to give him props as well. Like, the way he got on Fraser Ed's back, to like, he lost sight of him because of the movement. And then the burst of play, I mean, he's got bags of pace. Like, it's rapid when he gets going, comes to the ground. But he saw where, like, he knew what he wanted to do. This is what we can go back to Vancouver Mora. Like, he's drilled this into this kid, like get on the fullbacks like blind side and just judge what the player's doing and cut like and make that run and be decisive, and he was and got his reward. It's fantastic.
Yeah, really good from him, and hopefully we can see more opportunities like that in the future. For those that aren't aware, there are some pretty big youth tournaments going on involving CPL teams right now. There's the Island Games, I think it's called, or something similar, over in Newfoundland, where Halifax Wanderers are involved. They just had a match, the under 21s. I think it's 21 under 21s or under 23s. I can't quite remember. But they had a match against Ipswich Towns on their 21s or under 23s. And again, creating really good opportunities for them to be able to play against, a top, professional side in England. Their young players, to kind of give them, again, more opportunities, more experiences for them to grow and to evolve from. There's something similar coming soon on the West Coast in BC. There's the Kamloops Youth Tournament, which Vancouver FC is going to be a part of, where the Vancouver FC under 23 squad is going to be facing Fulham's under 21 side. Again, another really good opportunity for young players to test their mettle against teams that are on across the pond and really good academies that have history of fostering young players and turning them into established stars. So again, it all sort of points into the right direction that I feel like the CPL is moving in the right way to be able to get more young players involved, and that's what we want to see at the end of the day for the CPL. Just create more talents, and hopefully we get to see some of these young players become household names in the next few years. But now let's move on to the third and final game of the weekend, which was between Forge and Pacific. This one, broke the trend of the away team winning. It was the home team that won this one. Forge won
full house.
2-1 against Pacific. And again, a game, I feel like it was a trend. Now I'm kind of clocking it with I feel like it was very much a second half.
Yeah.
All the action sort of happened in the second half of games, especially in this game of Forge and Pacific. But we got to talk about Kwasi Poku.
Yeah.
As the very first thing in this match, because that man is on fire right now. He just, he felt like at the beginning he had a couple maybe half chances, but he was still kind of waiting for that perfect opportunity. In the second half, it finally came to him, and he made no mistake. He's turning into a serious goal threat for Forge, and in a sense where he's kind of acting a little bit as a classic number 9, and just all you got to do is give him that half chance and he will find a way to put it away. And that's why he's got so many goals so far. He's 1 goal off the Golden Boot race right now, and it feels like there's no stopping him.
No, I mean, we didn't call this at all. Like, no one did. No one could have. But when Ruben Pasillas went, and you're like, okay, well, there's less options now in that centre forward spot. Jordan Hamilton and Terran Campbell can battle it out. And obviously, when they were unavailable, Kwasi Poku's just decided, oh, hang on a minute, I've got something here to do. And it wasn't like a quick, smooth transition, but a couple of games in, it's been quick. Like how much he's changed in his confidence in the middle of the pitch compared to how that first game where you could see he was working hard, but he seemed a little bit confused about not playing on from the wing and being central throughout. But now, he's battling away with centre backs. He's showing really good strength. His movement's really good, and he's got the chance there. I mean, I was watching back, and I don't know if he's just that little VAR. I've been watching obviously too much of the Euros, so VAR on a sort of the hair of a knee bone coming up and catching you out or letting the goal stand. I don't know how close he was, but that's pretty, whatever. There's no VAR in this one, but he's also in the right spots. He's getting on the right side of defenders to make sure that when the ball comes in, he can get onto it. And it's just really good all round centre forward play.
Yeah, he's sort of embodying right place, right time
Mm.
as a striker right now, because you look at the second goal and it's kind of bouncing all over the box, but he's at the right place at the right time, and he
Reacting quick.
thrashes into the back of the net, and like he has. It shows how good his reactions are, his instincts, and it's crazy to think because Kwasi Poku, we were putting him as a fullback, as a wingback before the season, as being an important player for them, and now he's one of the league's best strikers. It's just incredible how things work in soccer sometimes. And you look at the fact that we were talking about like Old Forge, Woobens Passy is left. Jordan Hamilton isn't really scoring all that much. Terrence Gamble, is he still at the level that he was before? Our goal is going to be an issue for Forge. We were talking about that before the season, and apparently not, because Kwasi Poku is on fire right now. And it looks like there's no stopping him. But throughout the match, even though we did get those moments with Kwasi Poku throughout the match, it did feel like both sides were struggling to create chances. It wasn't like there were no chances. Of course, there was a few chances, but it felt like it was a bit too few and far between for both sides in this match. Too many. There's a lot of shots from range. Did you sort of feel like this game, until the goals started going in, did you feel like this game was kind of petering out to a 0-0? Because that's how it felt to me.
Yeah. There's an issue with both these teams, and very much more Pacific. But Forge in games that changes for them, but they do start, or they have long periods where it just looks like they're just struggling to really like step out of sort of first and second gear, and like there's just something about them. They're just laboring along, like they're not giving up too many opportunities. It's not that they're switching off. It's just that they just don't look like they can reach the standard that they're expecting to play in the sort of quickness and the crispness of the way they like in possession. It's a little bit slow. It's a little bit easy to read at times, and that's what's forcing all these sort of long range shots. But as you can see, like especially with Ford, they can step it up, but it's just frustrating, I think, if you're a Forge fan. I mean, great that you're getting the points, but it was frustrating watching them at times, thinking, come on, I know you can do better than this.
Yeah, especially because when they do turn it on, they're so good.
Yeah,
they're so fun to watch, and the way that they combine, like when it finally clicks, the way they combine is so good. You see on the right, Borges and Chouanier, the way that they can interchange on the right side. That's one of the most dangerous things that Forge have in their locker. And then you look on the left, you have Benny Banga, you have Daniel Parra as well, and they're able to sort of, with Parra, who has been away for a little while because of suspension, but now that he's back into the lineup, he's somebody that's willing to not only, go forward, but also go inside, which allows Benny Banga to have sort of space out wide or inside. There's kind of a sense of unpredictability on either side, because both of the wide combinations, they work so well, and that's where the danger really is for Forge. It just feels like it takes sometimes a little while for that to get into motion. And it's not to say that, there's issues necessarily going on, but last week against Vancouver FC, that shouldn't have been a game where, especially going against 10 men, that shouldn't have been a game that Forge should have given away a point. That was a game that they should have won. And it just felt like, again, moments where they kind of labored through they're sort of going through the motions, and then feel like they have that kind of that decisiveness about them that we know that they have, and they've shown that they have, even in that, in that very match and in many matches. So it's a little bit of a weird one for me with Forge, and that it just, they kind of struggle a bit at times to really get going. While Pacific, they've been kind of stuck in first gear pretty much the entire season in the attack. It took a penalty for them to score a goal. If it wasn't for that penalty, I don't know if they would have scored a goal at all, let alone had some shots on target. It just, they went back to the 4-3-3. They had Josh Hurd, Rian Moore, Eamon Salouf, but just still lacking any of that attacking intent. Similar to Cavalry, but honestly, you'd say probably worse because at least Cavalry have Warchowski doing something. In this one, I don't know who to point to as a bright spark in the attack.
No, there isn't one really, is there? Saluf gets the penalty again, and we've won a couple of games now with a penalty from him, and just hold out in defence. But they're having a tough time. I think Lejeunesse didn't have his best game in this one. Once, like, going back to Forge again, but they there's games where you watch like David Choignard and Tristan Borges, and you start watching them and you just think, hang on a minute, like 20 minutes ago, I really didn't think they could move that quickly.
Yeah.
They play like you think they just lead sort of slow but creative midfielders, and all of a sudden, once they get in a bit more flow, they've got a bit more pace about them. And I think both these teams are playing quite a bit of football. They're traveling quite a bit. Obviously, the Canadian Championship. So there's a lot of, maybe they are tiring slightly, but it did feel like Pacific they were matching that laboured sort of style of football, and once Forge stepped it up a little bit, Pacific just stayed at what they were at, and that's all they've got at the moment, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's something that it's been an issue. It's not like it's news to James Merriman. It's something that's been an issue for the entire season. Then I don't know how they'll be able to fix it unless it is maybe bringing in a new attacker, because it's past time for Rhian Moore to get onto the scoring sheet. But also you could say that maybe it's a service that he's getting as well, that he's not getting that much service for the kind of striker that he is. So maybe it involves not just maybe a new striker, a new attacker, but maybe getting a better creator, or in the sense of replacing what Manny Aparicio was for them last season, just getting a difference maker in the squad, because it all feels quite flat right now for Pacific.
Yeah, and they've got, I mean, when you look on the other side, we've got sort of those wide forwards like Dan Choignard and Baddy Banga. Josh Hurd's nowhere near that at the moment. Like he scored less goals last year, and this year his confidence in the final third doesn't seem there. He seems desperate to get a goal and will hit and go ahead. Like, he's not scared to have a go, but he's just lost that like confidence of how well he's striking the ball, and when he's creating chances, and his decision making going to final third. So Luce looks quite slow and just struggling to get in the games, and then you're forcing Stephen Yates forward, and you're forcing Cedric Toussaint forward. Like, these aren't players; they're players in the wrong sort of environment to get the best out of them, almost on like in that area of the pitch. And I think they need to really look at. But the issue, I guess, finances are a big issue. It seems over in Pacific, and if they can bring in some more wide alternatives to this attacking lineup, that might be something that could get better out of Rhian Moore. But again, like you say, he's not set it alight, has he?
No, he hasn't. And going into our final point, it's tough for a team like Pacific to be let down by a poor attack, especially when the defense and specifically their goalkeeper have been doing everything that they can to make sure that Pacific are, in the best place possible to go and win games. Emil Gazdov had another spectacular performance, even though he conceded 2 goals. Really good performance in this match. He made a massive save on Poku in the second half when it was still 1-1, and to keep his side in it. And it just feels like he's stepped up to a new level. In this season. We weren't able to talk about the Canadian Championship games because of sickness and Copa and other things, but he had a huge performance against the Whitecaps as well. He made some massive stops. The point blank save on Brian White to keep it still 1-0. Like, he's really stepped up to a new level. The way that he commands his box, the confidence that he has. In the goal where they scored from the corner, it should have been, he sort of let down from I think it was Pierre Lamotte at his near post, who heads it basically into danger instead of heading it back out
Yeah.
for another corner or letting it go because Gazdov, I think,
Mm.
went and called for it. It's like his team is letting him down, even though he's kind of producing these show-stopping performances, and it must be really frustrating for him to be in those kind of positions where you feel like I've done my job, but the rest of you haven't.
Yeah, it's tough. It's like it's great to see how quickly he's overcome that difficult start to last year with the mistakes that kept creeping in, and they seem to be out of his game mostly at the moment, and most clean sheets in the league for like defensively they've had losses, and like there's losing Didic is absolutely massive, and he stepped up, and he has, we can praise the defense as well, but he has commanded his area. He's organizing that back line really well, and he's just really sort of matured quite quickly and taken on this role as like a top quality goalkeeper. And when you look at like, Ottawa are going to be playing particularly well, and they've got good goalkeepers there, but they're both getting rotated quite a bit. Like yesterday gets his chances, and then Ingham gets a rest, and when you look around the league, you've got other players that you just think, it could well be like a bit of a potential for a goalie of the year at the end of the season if he continues playing like this, because he's doing really well for a side that isn't causing too many problems at the other end of the pitch.
No, I definitely feel like he's a goalkeeper of the year candidate in the form that he's on. And, being such a young goalkeeper, the question is going to be, how long are we going to see him around in the CPL? Because surely at this point, he's starting to raise some eyebrows from places outside of the league. And it's only a matter of time before he gets snapped up by maybe a European team or another team in North America that will be able to get him playing at maybe a higher level. So, it's sort of enjoying while we can situation with Gazdov right now, but he needs more support. He needs more help. The poor brother has been doing everything that he can. I saw a stat that Pacific now have dropped 11 points from winning positions in 14 matches, the most in the CPL. And I gotta say, it's not his fault. Right. It is not his fault that's happening. Pacific should be putting games away that they have not been able to put away, and it's going to be tough for him to be able to deal with that. But at least for himself, for his own personal career, if he can keep those really good performances going, then he's going to have a really glimmering career, hopefully in the future, maybe probably outside of the CPL.
Yeah, he'd definitely be one of those ones who are going off for pre-season training with some other European sides, like we saw with likes of TJ and James Cameron earlier in the year.
Yeah, wouldn't be surprised if it goes back to Germany with a couple of those sides and at the end of the season. But that is it for this week. Thank you so much for listening to the episode. Make sure to follow us once again on all of our socials at Coast to Coast FC, so you can give us your thoughts on this week's episode. Let us know what you thought about the format that we have, that we've been running with for the last few weeks. What you thought about the press conference, Fisk's emotional response. Was he kind of maybe a bit too emotional, or was it maybe the right response that you want to see from your players after such a disappointing loss? Let us know in the comments, and we'd love to interact with you more on social media and stuff like that as the CPL kind of continues to ramp up in this second half of the season. But until next time, I'm Felipe Ojejo.
And I'm Mike Rice.
And this has been Coast to Coast FC, signing out.